One.
Hey, Clive, it's me and Nicola. Today we are going to do a Florida shark movie. We are going to do Uomini Squali, Pericolo Negli Abissi, L'ultimo squalo, and you'll catch your authority the Squali. You're going to have a Squali coming out of your ass.
Right,
Oh.
I think no more need be said. So until next time on Film Crack Crack. Yes, Film Crack Crack. Haha! He tricked you. It's not Luigi.
No.
It is in fact Nicholas
good old Nicholas O'Sheacon, and over there on the other side of the ocean is...
It's a me, Clive Davis.
Perfect. So anyone who is Italian who is tuned into this will have already shut it off.
Oh yeah,
in rage.
Yeah. Wow. Good. Glad to see the back of them.
So this time it was my suggestion, and I figured, oh, you probably should have given us your Bruce face up against the thing that you did. You may remember that last time we talked, you had your like.
Right. Oh no, I think that was
it was brilliant.
More interesting what you did.
Okay. So yeah, I thought we would do do our own.
We do have nothing better to do with it.
Yes. Yeah.
Was just wondering.
Yeah. Then to watch 4 shark movies in as many days. Yeah. So it's Shark Week here at Film Crack Crack.
Can I just stop you there, Nick? Can I just ask this? I probably should have looked this up, but I was just wondering if you actually knew this off the top of your head, because I didn't. So, Shark Week is a thing, right?
Yeah.
And for some reason in my head, it's, and this might be from watching one or too many stupid films, is Shark Week a specific thing to do with, like, is it like, you know, the Fort Lauderdale holiday of sharks or something? Is it something to do with teenagers and the party? What the fuck is Shark?
No.
Oh,
Shark.
Okay.
Shark Week, and I can't remember what channel it is, but there is a channel that basically shows nature documentaries.
Right.
And during Shark Week, or I mean, it shows documentaries generally or real life stuff. I can't remember which channel it is, so I should have looked this up before. But anyway, they show Shark Week. They just show a whole crap ton of
shark stuff,
shark documentaries. Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, okay. I think I might be confused because there might be a film called Shark Week or something, and it's like during Shark Week, some students go in a diving cage and get it. So I was wondering, for some reason in my brain I got confused. I was thinking if it had mutated to the point where it's now like a thing, like a certain time of year you go somewhere that has sharks and you party and swim with the sharks.
That sounds great.
It does.
I don't think so. No.
Okay. Is it this time of year? Is it always? Or is
I think it is. I think it is. Yeah, I think it's always the same time of year, and it's possible that other channels may have also, because there's a crap ton of different channels now that have that kind of reality-based TV or documentary-based stuff. So there may be other channels that do their own version of Shark Week now.
But is it now? Have we accidentally crashed?
I don't think
Shark
so.
Week?
I highly doubt it. So the reason actually I wanted to do some shark movies is we had some great white sightings here off of the coast of Prince Edward Island.
Oh.
And you would think, and yeah, we actually had some beach shutdowns this summer.
Wow.
Due to sharks. So they come up here. Well, they come to hunt seals. We have a lot of seals around the island. But what's interesting is, and again, whether this is whether it's global warming or not, it may not be, because actually the water around Prince Edward Island, strangely enough, is the warmest north of the Carolinas.
All right.
So for some reason, however the currents work or however the oceans work, we have fairly temperate waters. So we do get great whites. And so they've been, I guess some have been tagged so that it's known when they're in the vicinity. They have an emitter of some kind. And so, yeah, we had some up here. And
so were you unable to compete in your windsurfing regatta?
Yes, the regatta was cancelled, unfortunately.
because I know how much
And-
you look forward to that.
Well, you know that my dad was a
Your
champion.
dad? Yeah, your dad.
Yes,
Yeah.
he was actually a champion windsurfing regatta guy in Ireland and Canada.
Until
but
that
yes.
shark took his leg.
Yes, yeah. So anyways, that's why I was thinking about sharks earlier when we were.
You're so not your father's son.
No, absolutely not even close. But yeah, and so I don't know, I was thinking about Enzo G Castellari, who directed, because the whole, our purview is movies that somehow slip through the cracks, or in this case actively was banned, pulled out of cinemas, at the behest of Paramount, I think. One of the films,
because we spend our time thinking about films that fall through the cracks and stupid things like that. That's why, rather than think about global warming or the safety of your family on the beach, your mind went to Enzo G
Castellari movies. Yes, exactly. And so as I was digging in to Italian shark movies, I discovered that there was a bunch of Mondo documentaries made right after. Well, actually, okay. Well, I guess we'll get into this in a moment. I had assumed that they would have all been post Jaws. Jaws is what, 1975, right?
Yeah.
But as it turns out, this guy Bruno Valati, who directed the two that we're going to talk about at the very beginning here, had been making sea and shark documentaries from 1970.
Right. Is he a bit of a Jacques Cousteau kind of figure?
It seems like it, yeah.
Right.
And if you thought I looked dodgy in that mustache there, Bruno Valati looks like Michael Palin doing one of his Italian, like, grease-haired, mustachioed, like right out of a 1974 episode of Monty Python's Flying Circus. Like when he showed up, I was like, holy crap, wow. Because he's all over the first documentary, and he does appear in the second documentary as well.
Yes, letting people, in the strange worldview of these films, just leaving them to die.
Apparently. Well, we'll talk about it. So, I don't know if you want to maybe give a very, very potted history of what a Mondo film is to begin with before we start talking about this subgenre of Mondo films generally.
Yeah, so Mondo, Italian for world, right? I guess, is it modo in Spanish? Something similar, isn't it? Or mundo? Or...
Mundo. Yeah.
There we go. Something is modo as well. But yeah, so Mondo meaning literally, world film. So basically these would have been sort of kicked off. There were some kind of precursors, but basically the granddaddy is Mondo Cane, or It's a Dog's World, from 1962 by Jacopetti and his lot. And it was a major hit around the world, and it was footage of, other cultures that would have been very exotic in the days, before everyone was accustomed to international air travel, outside of the jet set lot. So, and particularly honing in on kind of slightly more salacious,
exploitational,
things to do with
features,
violence and nudity. And then they made these. They still make them, I suppose, to a certain degree, but I'm guessing nowadays all that stuff's migrated to reality TV and stuff like that. Exactly. But they got cranked, as these things always do, especially if the Italians are involved. They were, or from the beginning in this case. But things get cranked over time, so the levels of sex and violence increase, and also the levels of actually, you could argue that how objective is any documentary, right? At a certain point you have to where to point your camera or where to make an edit point. There's always choices, right? It's very rare outside of Frederick Wiseman or something.
Yes, to have that true cinema verite. Yeah.
So also was the it started to shift the kind of levels between what was genuine documentation and what was fabricated or
staged. And I think we're definitely getting into some of that with both of these, and the second one even more so than the first one we're going to talk about.
So we're talking here in the areas of, and this is nowhere near that level, but I suppose the infamous titles here are going to be things like the Faces of Death series, like where you have faked electrocutions and executions. And one of my favorites in one of the Faces of Death is some guy like parachuting out of a plane, and they edit it so it looks as if he lands in a crocodile farm.
Pit, yes, yeah.
Off screen is just there's also, is it Faces of Death 4, I think, ends with, there's a piece of footage of like a orchestra, I think it's like a school orchestra or something on stage, and the stage collapses. And in real life, that was it. There was just, they fell through the stage, and it was one of those slightly kind of amusing things that would end up on the end of the news. And finally, you know, the skateboarding dog stuff. But Faces of Death added this extra footage of like people being led in front of the camera and like stretchers with their like limbs covered in blood, and someone going, "Oh my God, it's been a terrible 1,000's dead," and you know, that kind of thing. So, and we're getting into that a little bit. We're getting our toes wet here in that territory. With
absolutely.
Velati movies. So, you did a bit of research, for Mr. Velati, didn't you? So, what did you find?
Yeah, there's not much available about him in English, but if you go to the Italian Wikipedia page and just hit translate this page, so he was born in Egypt, and only one of his parents is Italian. Dad, judging by the last name, and he was quite a prominent partisan. I guess he did quite a lot of fighting against the fascists at the kind of the tail end, and he was running guns and stuff into Italy to the partisans, and then at some point he seems to have sort of just segued into this career as an Italian Jacques Cousteau, basically. Making these underwater documentaries, and the first one was in 1970 about the like diving into the Andrea, is it Andrea Doria? I can't remember the name of it. It was a famous
shipwreck, right?
And so he was with that team, and he made a documentary about diving down and kind of and so what's interesting is he seems to have been like a legitimate environmentalist later in life, and a legitimate, sort of marine biology, not necessarily a scientist, but like he, the documentaries, but then obviously he also, this was the time of these mondo things where, bums in seats means,
well, even,
shock value,
even Jacques Cousteau, right? You watch some of that stuff now, and they're like, dynamiting coral reefs and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, true. It was just it's a matter of time, I guess.
There's a film, I can't remember what it was called now. It's it was the first film directed by Louis Malle, like co-directed it, and it's a Jacques Cousteau documentary, which is a fantastic documentary. It's got amazing footage in it. But there's a bit in it where their own ship kind of injures this sea calf, and then all these sharks, of course, come out of nowhere. They smell blood in the water, and they tear this calf to bits, right? And then totally, I always get the word, is it anthropomorphizing? When and they suddenly decide to get revenge. And the crew of the ship start using hooks to pull these sharks on deck and beat them to death for basically doing what they naturally do. And they fucking injured the sea. It's like, it's such a weird worldview that you wouldn't think like that now. Like, no one would think like that now. Right?
No.
So it's worth keeping that in mind, I think, how our relation to the natural world is. We're still not quite what it should be, but it has come a long way, isn't it?
Yes, there's footage occasionally in these things, but we'll get into that. So basically, the first one is called.
Sorry, Nick. Sorry. Just one thing I wanted to mention as well is the other thing I found interesting about Velati as well was some of his other credits. He was a producer on Caltiki, the monster, the Italian blob movie. Which I don't know if you've seen, which is really good, actually. I really like it.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Good blob film.
And I forgot he also directed Giant of Marathon.
Co-directed
kind of
something
which is kind of a sort of a peplum-y, but it's more based on a real.
Yes, I don't think I've seen Giant of Marathon actually.
I think for whatever reason I haven't. There might be somebody in it that I liked, and that's why I saw it. Maybe an act, but yeah. So basically, the first one from 1975, but as I said, it's not his first. He evidently had directed a couple before this, but the first one we're going to talk about is I guess the title would be Man and Shark, right? Uomini, Squali.
Yes.
1975, and
I don't know if Uomini looks to me as if it would be human, but I don't know if it's
humans and sharks. Yeah, maybe humans and sharks or man and sharks. Yeah. Well, Uomo is man, because it shows up a lot in titles of spaghetti westerns.
Yeah, so
Uomini, maybe men and sharks or humans and sharks.
Anyway.
I mean, I mean, it's of the two, it's a bit more of a documentary. It feels a bit more like most of it's kind of like, okay, they're going to different places. They're at one point they're in Cabo San Lucas, which is very close to where my parents live. And when you see all the hammerheads, that's there's an island right off where my mom and dad live, which is the main hammerhead breeding ground.
All right.
For, I guess, like, I don't know if it's for all of North America, but anyway, it's a huge place for hammerheads. And I think it's actually called like the Bay of Death in Spanish. Like that's like on the maps. Like it's actually what it's called. And that's where my dad kiteboards. Although not usually during hammerhead breeding season. But
once again, the acorn has fallen very. You look like a milkman, right? When you were
it's entirely possible. And then so I've actually seen. So I've walked down the beach where my parents' house is down there, and seen sharks out on the beach that have been gutted, just the way you see it in the movie. Like that is still done. Sharks are still caught and still kind of cut up for. I don't know if they're finning them for the Chinese. I mean that's kind of increasingly frowned on around, even even in places like where my parents are. But it is it's a bit disconcerting when you've been swimming in that earlier that day and then walked 20 feet down the beach and like, oh, right there are sharks in there.
They call it the Bay of Death, but I mean, is it a coincidence, or are hammerheads known to attack humans often, or like are they aggressive? I mean, it might be called Bay of Death because
there could be totally different.
All day long.
I don't know that there's necessarily the connection between the sharks and the name of because they're trying to rebrand it as the Bay of Dreams right now, like so, but I think that's just because they're building a lot of resorts down there these days. But anyhow, I mean, I think maybe we'll just talk about why don't we just talk about scenes that jump out at us rather than try, because you can't really go through it. There's a story.
Well, this was the lesser of the two for me. I think one of the reasons being, like you said, because it's more there's a lot less stage stuff and there's less I mean there's some sensational stuff and we'll get to it, but less so, and also because I can't necessarily, like, if I could follow it, if there were subtitles and I could understand all the information that was being imparted, I mean, I suppose it's not a bad little nature doc for its time. It's got some pretty good footage, but if you don't, because I don't understand Italian, and it is not available as far as I know with subtitles or anything, and also this is film crack, right? So you're gonna have to. This is
deep to find this.
So it's slightly unfair of me to judge it in a way, really, because I'm not following. But it seems fine. But because what I'm looking for is, because I can't appreciate it in that way, I'm looking for the shock value, and I'm looking for the incongruousness and the weirdness, and I think the next one we're going to talk about has a lot more.
Sure thing. I mean, one thing that jumped out at me though, and you probably caught this, was there's a point at which there's two elephant seals that kind of like flop up the beach and start slamming their bellies against each other, and then the narrator is like, the narrator likens them to these sumo di Giapponese.
Sumo di Giapponese, yeah.
And I did enjoy that. But soundtrack is weird. Some real weird dissonant squealing, almost noise music-y elements of the soundtrack to that.
Is this the same person? Is this Stefano Liberati as well, the one who did the other film? Or is
I don't know if it's the same. If it's the same, but there was some interesting. I also love all the mugging. There's a lot of like the director and whoever his friend are just like doing a lot of this.
Have you ever seen? There's a guy. What's his name now? There's a collection. There's a Criterion collection called Science is Fiction, and it's like 29 or something collected shots. This famous French, similar. He was in the Cousteau kind of vein, but he crossed over with surrealists, and he was a very early documentarian of all sorts of aquatic life, especially like, you know, bugs and small things. I imagine you'd get a kick out of it.
Oh yeah, that sounds awesome.
There's a collection called Science is Fiction. Anyway, there's one. It's called from the 60s. I think it's called The Love Life of an Octopus. And it follows this this octopus around, and it's made this like hiding underneath rocks and things, and it's just fascinating. But the soundtrack is by Pierre Henry as well. So it's
so music concrete.
It's like 15-20 minutes of pure joy. I'm sure you would enjoy.
No, that sounds fantastic. But it's funny, there's, you know, a few, like, I mean, there's one part like where they stuff a wetsuit and put it in a cage and put it down under the water. I couldn't figure out what was going on, what the point of that was at all, but it was awesome. And then I love the diving pelicans with the drum rolls and then the cymbal crash when they would hit the water.
Yes. They did that again in the other one, didn't they? The second film. So. Yeah, it's the same trick. A lot of it's interesting across these two films, and I'm guessing the other 2 or 3 that he did as well. I'm guessing that there's like a bit of a returning to the well kind of. I
suspect so. Unused footage, you know, that they had shot, or but
for whatever reason, someone came to him, or he spotted an opportunity, like, now is the time. This time I will have the hit on my hands, or
and good God, were there some, I mean, I know it's the 70s, but like there were some indecently small Speedos being worn by some of those Italians.
Right. And also the other thing that's shared as well is this fascinating, which is quite interesting, is when they bring in the volcanic earthquake and lava stuff, especially the second film, but they talk about that a little bit here as well, right? And so it's interesting that he has this kind of slight he's obviously quite fascinated with geology and stuff as well, right? I suppose you would be if you were studying the ocean floor. And
that we do see them swimming around in caves and stuff. And then there's one piece of like the kids swimming with the sharks, like hold on to their tails. In that first one where I was like, whoa, that doesn't seem safe. You know. And then I couldn't figure out the part they go to a Polynesian village that seems to be abandoned, and then there's kind of like everyone looks very sad and serious, and are we to assume that sharks ran them out of this village? Like I was like,
that's why I'm slightly loath to
really comment.
Because I don't really know what's going on half the time. But
and then it cuts to Australia for pretty much the last chunk of the movie, and that's interesting. The Australian air raid sirens,
right?
You know, and
So
and then
so I was slightly confused as well. So some things get bitten off.
Yes,
but I wasn't sure. So is the way I followed it was a diver has his hand bitten off at a certain point, and then something else unrelated happens for a while, and then another cameraman gets his leg bitten off. Is that right?
That seems to be what's being intimated. Yeah.
Right. And then it seems to almost like there's almost no time passes at all. You see this, assuming a cameraman bleeding to death.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some stuff on the narration I didn't understand. And Velati comes out of the water with his camera, and he's really pleased. It looks like he's really pleased he got a shot.
Mm-hmm.
Is he really pleased he got the shot of the diver having his leg bit off? And then he's smiling, and then it ends, and I don't see anyone being rescued. So are we led to in this weird? Because obviously, no, I think that stuff was all faked, right?
Stage, yeah.
But within the confection of the film, though,
yeah,
are we led to believe that these men died for our entertainment?
Yeah, it's really hard to figure out how you're supposed to take those things. At one point, I thought, have they been like, is this a dramatic recreation? Because at one point they do show somebody's healed kind of wounds in their leg, and
right.
One of the people they're interviewing, but yeah, I just couldn't figure out. But then when it was actually somebody who had a camera with them, I was like, what are they?
Yeah, because I was trying to figure, because to be fair, they might directly say on this, they might say, this is a reconstruction of what happened. This is not, they might say that.
Yes.
It, right? But something tells me not. Like, especially when you compare it to the second film as well, and some of the stuff in that seems a lot more specifically meant to seem as if, oh my God, we've witnessed.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I just think, I have things like, is this shark bite scene real? Question mark. No, faked.
Right.
Is this guy supposed to be part of the crew? Yeah, fascinating.
Do you want to jump to the second one and then maybe like couch it in those terms? Because well, if you have more to say about this one in particular, you go for it. But I don't. I ran out of notes on that one. I found less to interest me, I have to admit.
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, I will say that, I guess some of the grislier stuff is the stuff of, and this kind of fits into that mondo category of the sharks being either kind of cut up and gutted on the beach, or then the sharks, like there was that part where the guy has the kind of spear with the like it has a bullet in the end of it, basically like a charge, and he just kind of like which shows up actually later on in one of the fiction films we're going to talk about, almost exactly the same thing, but you see him actually like hit the shark and the charge goes off and it blows a hole in the shark's head.
It's a stunning battle kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and a lot of kind of these like pretty disturbing death kind of like flapping, like kind of, there's like a protracted shark snuff section of the movie that starts to get a bit depressing when sharks are not doing terribly well these days as a species, right? So yeah, I guess that's, it's a weird mix of like and then I wondered, like with the second one where there's more of it, I was like, did sharks see these movies? Is this why they're so pissed off?
Yes.
But anyway, let's get into
the representation on screen.
Pericolo, Negli, Abissi. This is the 78 one. Begins in Japan.
Yes, and was, judging by the poster you can find online, was released in Japan as well, right? Okay. As Shark!
Good title.
Yeah.
Nice.
I don't know where else. I don't know where else it was released, actually, well, that's interesting. According to the IMDb, it's actually Italian-Japanese co-production.
Oh, that's.
But strange. I don't know how much the IMDb is to be trusted sometimes.
Right.
In these matters of, I mean, this is a fairly obscure. I mean, there's not much else about it, right? But it could be. I mean, it did get a release in Japan, and like I said, I'm not sure how many. And Japan was mad for mondo content, and especially by 1976, I can easily see them like funding, co-funding an Italian mondo film, and clearly they did come here, right? Because of the.
I mean, well, that's what's that the whole opening segment is in a village. So where are they? I mean, how much do you know about the whole?
He said, I caught Ilo de Japanese, Japanese island, but then he said something, and it didn't seem like a name, I reckon. It didn't seem like a Japanese name. So I don't know, he might have said a descriptive word in Italian, like meaning moto or something, but I don't know where this is.
But we know that this is real. I mean, that there are these topless diving girls, the Anma, or is it Anma or Ama? Ama, yeah. So the Ama girls, like because they show up in Japanese movies as well, because it's it's a titillating idea of these mostly naked girls diving down for pearls, right? And then
everyone from Japan and then around the world started turning up to ogle them, and then they started putting clothes on. I think. Like,
yes, yeah. But this is obviously early enough, I guess, where they were still. But then what's interesting.
I think it's one of those things as well. I think it isn't necessarily uniform, and it's case by case, and it's place by place. Like some people did go topless, some wore. It wasn't like a hard and fast rule that you had to have your knockers out while
right to go pearl fishing.
Yeah, to appease some sea god or something.
I did enjoy that Chico was dubbed into Italian. And then
that's the interesting thing as well, is that all the Japanese are dubbed as well, right? It's not like you're hearing the Japanese and then they seem to have dubbed like Japanese people saying things as well, right? Like look over there and stuff, and
so that opening footage is fairly relaxing. Obviously it's nice, it's mostly cute Japanese girls naked and diving down, and then we get this scene of one being attacked, but she's clearly not Japanese.
No.
And it's
clearly a Caucasian woman.
Yeah.
In a long black hair wig.
Yep.
Even they didn't even match. Like she's wearing like a totally different
headscarf
and things.
Yeah. Yeah. No. It's hilariously badly done.
Yeah. The tits are different. I know. I was paying attention. It's. At first, I was like, "Oh, have they switched to a different scene? Are they, juxtaposing?" And it took me a few beats to figure out that, oh no, they're actually trying to sell this as
she's getting attacked by a shark.
Woman being attacked by a shark. It's quite, it's surreal cinema at its finest. It's great.
Yes, and then the next scene was like a scene of a big ship dragging this like mast thing like along the bottom of the ocean, covered in what looked like feather dusters to me. And I was like, I don't understand what they're doing, this is in aid of. And then we get a bunch of footage of people just hammering the crap out of coral, just wrecking a coral reef, which is, again, from our perspective now, it seems pretty harsh. With the seas dying and all.
Well, also that when they go to Polynesia as well, right, when they're collecting shells as well, they seem to be just yanking shit out random
and I couldn't quite figure out what was going on there. It seemed like a guy freaked out. He was down at the bottom, he was chipping stuff off, and then suddenly I don't know if he's got the bends or if
something
he's had
like that. I think I read some. I mean, there's a few bits and bobs on, it's like you said, slim pickings, but if you go to like IMDb, Letterboxd, some of there's like different people give their interpretations. I don't know if they're Italian speakers or not, but someone mentions that he gets some kind of like embolism or something, or something like that.
So he gets pulled up and then there's this weird thing where kind of at one point he's counting how much money he was going to make from these pieces of coral. You know, it's 30 million lira, and then there's this weird insert shot of somebody buying a necklace or something that costs the same amount of money he was going to get for the piece of coral. And I wasn't sure, were they trying to make some comment about, the dangers of lusting after money, or like what was this all about? I'm
guessing it might be because they used to do that, a lot of that kind of sarcastic juxtaposition stuff in the Jacopetti films. Like they'd show one thing and then they'd show something else in the civilized world, and basically someone would say more or less, I wonder who the real cannibals are, right? So I'm wondering if it's something like that, right? Like,
and then we're in Hawaii for a while with luau girls.
And
then dudes like deep sea diving with no equipment, which is actually pretty impressive to see. Is to see people go down that deep just by holding their breath.
I went on holiday. Where was it? Palau, I think. And yeah, some of the people we had as guides and stuff, nothing, just straight down and all the way back up. It's just like amazing to me. Not even like goggles or anything.
Yep. Yeah, just
like, how are you seeing through seawater? Like, why are your eyes not
burning?
Yeah, are you like Aquaman or
and the next scene is one of my favorites. It's the underwater drinking party.
Oh, this is the highlight of the film. This is what it's all about.
So much wrong with that scene. But anyway, why don't you explain it, and then we'll see if I'm assuming you picked up on one of my favorite features. But anyway.
Well, so basically, it seems to be an underwater strip club of some.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get to that, I want to talk about the audience, because it's worth. So the audience for the strip club as well. Before we get to the stripping, they obviously this is stage and it's just a bit of fun and it's not supposed to be taken seriously. But you can't help but because the logistic, like, why are they even bothering? Like, so there's an underwater waitress with a tray with a couple of cups on it, right, for a start. Like, it's like serving people. And you're thinking, what? Have you like? Because I couldn't figure out, is this staged just for the film, or is this actually like a really weird thing that someone does actually do and they happen to
film? And they're filming. Yeah, who knows, right?
Because they're drinking. The other thing as well, they're drinking champagne.
Yes.
They're down there and they're sitting like on the. Obviously, it's not that deep, but they're sat there, and they've got their breathing gear on, but then they pop open like a magnum of champagne, and then I guess they take out their breather and take a swig of champagne, and then like, but how does that?
Yes, I was wondering about the logistics of that too. Yeah, there's a guy with because there's also a guy with
going to an underwater strip club with me, Nick.
You know what? You only live once. There's also a guy who's drinking out of like a kind of more of a teacup, and I'm thinking, well, that doesn't make sense.
I know that doesn't work. Yeah, I'm gullible sometimes, but I'm not that gullible. But with the champagne bottle thing, I was trying to figure out, if you put your thumb over the top and you very quickly did it, and then put your breathing rock and then put
it might.
No, I mean, if you think it might work, but it's counterintuitive. I mean, yeah. I don't often.
You'd have to get a really good seal around the bottle with your mouth. You didn't also suck in seawater at the same time. That would be, I think, the big.
It's a waste of good champagne. I would have thought.
I guess his nose is covered up too, but I think because you couldn't really drink, because I would assume you'd suck water with your nose.
Drink
probably not
beverages.
Probably not. So that's all going on. This is the audience, and then we've got these two ladies.
Right. Yeah. Here we go. Yeah. So this is what they're watching. Although you don't really see them in the same shot, but no.
And for one thing, the girls don't have any kind of breathing apparatus.
Yeah, they're actually
makes no sense.
Yeah, but I'm guessing this must. I mean, it must be in the sea, because I don't think they would have gone to the trouble of building quite such an elaborate set.
Right.
So it's actually what these girls are doing is actually very, very impressive and bizarre and quite sexy. Like, there's something quite alluring. Tell us how this plays out, Nick. How exactly does this strip routine work?
Well, so the ladies are wearing bikinis that have these long kind of trailing bits of fabric coming off of them, or they're built up of a series of pieces of fabric that are attached to them, and they're attached to these long trailing strings.
Like bikinis made of layers of string.
Yeah. And so these hand puppet fish, which are definitely not real fish, but hand puppets, keep entering into the frame from kind of these holes in this rock. Now, there are real fish swimming around for sure.
Right.
But they will then grab onto one of these pieces of string and yank it and remove bit by bit
Now, you watched this in a pretty low grade quality version, just like I did.
Mhm.
I don't know if I should admit this. I didn't necessarily think they were hand puppet fish.
I'm 100% sure those
Really?
fish are not
What
real.
leads
Yes.
you to believe? I mean, in terms of their behavior, yes, I find it highly unlikely. But didn't you think they looked like real fish?
No, they looked like quite Muppety to me.
Really?
And
I
yes,
thought they looked like real fish.
They came right out of Jim Henson's workshop.
I'm gonna have to watch it again now.
I had it on the big screen TV here, and yeah, I was very amused but not convinced.
I feel quite ashamed.
Because I don't think you can. I mean, you can train. I guess you can train dolphins, but they're not fish. They're mammals. I don't know that you can train a fish to do anything.
Well, no, I was guessing.
Even if it was food attached.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. There would be food attached to the end of each string or something like that. No,
I'm not buying it. but I'd love to believe I'd love to believe it was real. But given how much else is staged, but yes, my note here just says, girls are being stripped by puppet fish. Wow.
No, it's wow either way, but I'm going to choose to dream.
You want to suspend? So this is funny because I believe just before this we were talking about how suspending your disbelief was something that, intelligent people, anyway.
I didn't say
we won't get to that.
I just said it's
okay.
It's interesting.
I like where you choose to suspend your disbelief versus where others might choose to do.
Right. But really, it's interesting to me because it never even occurred to me
those fish weren't real. Awesome.
I genuinely thought, wow, those are fish are amazing. Like, I was thinking they must have like bits of fish food on the end of each string or something like that.
I mean, I'd love to be proven wrong. I would love to be proven wrong. So
yeah.
Anyway,
no, I decide to dream. I choose to dream in this
okay
case. But yes,
anyway,
so they slowly unravel and all the way down as well.
They're fully nude, these ladies. Yep. Yes, it's a pretty wonderful piece of cinema for sure. And then we get to and then what does the scene with the guy in an old-fashioned kind of like 1800s diving suit, which is very weird, like with the big diving helmet and the kind of inflatable, suit. And there's a bunch of
I've used one of those. You can again, it was in Palau, I think you could do what's called a sea walk, where in fairly shallow water and you walk along the water, and basically you have one of those old style diving bells on your head connected to a hose to oxygen on the boat, and you just walk out. Yeah. So
you get to be Robot Monster, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. I swear to God, that is what I was doing underwater to my wife. The other Korean tourists with us were wondering what the fuck I was doing, I think. But yeah, basically I was going, human! Human!
Awesome.
If only I had my gorilla suit on, you might have known.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so there's that bunch of hammerheads. Then we've got more shark butchery. And then we do get shark fins actually just being hacked off, which is grim. And then that's when I wondered if maybe actual sharks had started to see these movies and got pissed off, and hence we get.
I don't think they were real sharks making. I think they were hand puppet sharks.
Oh, that's entirely possible. Let's hope so. In that case, and then there's the amazing with the bikini girls and the phallic snake attack.
Yeah, so it was this. So I looked again. Someone commented on this, and they called those moray eels, but they looked more like snakes to me.
Yeah.
I think my image of a moray eel is a little bit thicker, right? Like not more stupid. I mean, wider.
Yeah. Yes. But yeah, so one of them attacks her, and again, her clothes get ripped off, and one of her nipples gets bitten by this.
Yeah,
sea snakey thing.
It intimated that the sea snake goes goes south as well, right? Goes underneath her bikini bottom. And at the very end of the scene, she falls to the sea floor.
Yes, seemingly dead. Yeah.
And you're like, wow, did we just see a hot, topless, blonde bitten to death by a sea snake? While
the answer is no.
No,
we did not. But the movie is attempting to sell us that idea.
Yeah,
yes.
which is just remarkable to me. It's wow. They just
Yes. Well, it was
before its day.
It was a different time,
Yes.
But then we get the is it the same guy losing his leg again? Is it just footage from the other film of the guy getting his leg chewed off at the end?
It did look familiar.
It felt to me like it was exactly the same footage we'd seen in the other documentary. So, but then a bunch of stuff explodes.
But with the more so they're harpooning sharks as well, right? They're going around harpooning sharks, and then this is confusing to me. What seems to be like a lava vent or something suddenly opens up, and then but then they go near it for some reason. Like that doesn't seem wise. And they seem to get burnt up in this lava vent, and I couldn't figure out, like, maybe the narration's explaining, but why do they go over and get, like, I couldn't quite figure this out. It's kind of an awesome scene in terms of, like, I don't think I've seen any cinematic imagery that looks quite like that before.
I agree.
Underground vent kind of exploding and people like, it's like, wow, that's kind of cool. And then comic booky kind of imagery from the natural world turned comic book, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Which I suppose what this whole film is really, is that it's kind of like they've bent the natural world to their will, right? Like,
pretty much.
Where you can drink champagne underwater and real fish will help people do a strip routine instead. You wait, Nick, when the Blu-ray comes out, because as we can make those things happen, because
that's true. Yeah, we have that ability.
Update for long-term listeners: Human Animals is now on Blu-ray. Amazingly,
we can only credit to our having covered it in episode 2.
Absolutely. So when this comes out on Blu-ray, you'll see, Nick, that those are real fish.
Those are real fish.
Yeah.
And then there's a bunch of ice avalanches that seem to happen at the end of the movie as well, right? After we get, am I wrong about this?
No, I think you're right. I think,
or is that all part? Okay.
It's connected to the lava. I think, they're talking about seismic activity, right? I don't know if was it ice or was it like cloudy? Again, difficult to tell.
It was kind of hard to make out.
Water, clouded by rock and dust, and but this was a lot more fun than the other film to watch.
Yes, because it was way trashy. It was even trashy. I mean, the other one was trashy, but this was more.
This would be
overtly
the one
trashy.
I would like. I mean, if you can understand Italian, I mean, maybe the other ones are thoroughly more worthwhile documentaries. I really couldn't say. But if you are like us and you are ignorant of the Italian language, but you like seeing real fish help women disrobe underwater, this is the film for you, right? I'm not quite sure what else is on the list, unless it looks like his other films are slightly more like the Andrea Doria one. I don't know if they have women stripping in the middle of this wreck. They wouldn't have got permission for that, right? Or the other, what's the other one? The other one's called Cari Mostri del Mare, which I think is like friendly
monsters of the deep. Yes. Yeah.
I'm guessing by the name that's slightly, isn't that nice? Rather than, but again, there's something very nice about the fish helping you remove your clothes. So they might reuse that footage.
It's entirely possible. And then, if you really like to see Italian men wearing, plum smugglers of an incredibly small size, kind of annoying sharks, and sometimes murdering them, then you could watch the first one, if that's your cup of tea.
Right. So what we're going to do now is, because sometimes I have trouble editing these, and just in case I don't, but I'm desperate for a piss. So I can hear you, Nick, so don't worry. So either wrap this up or introduce the next part while I just duck out for a minute.
All right.
Yeah?
You go ahead. Right. Okay. So while Clive is relieving himself, we'll get on to the last couple of movies. So these movies are both directed by what?
Jesus.
Wonderful. So these movies are both directed by Enzo G. Castellari, who is an Italian film director, mostly famous for action movies. And he did, going right back to the kind of spaghetti westerns, he did a bunch of them. They tended to be more comedy spaghetti westerns. What I love him best for, I suppose, is his series of kind of Italian police movies, where...
You can't have a biscuit, no.
I have no idea what's going on off screen, and I don't want to know. You know, the Italians were kind of well known, the Italian film industry, for kind of seizing on whatever was popular. Hey, hello, you're back.
Yeah.
I was just explaining who Enzo G. Castellari is.
Yeah, every word. Yeah.
Okay.
Keep going, keep rolling.
And so, you know, old Enzo G has ended up kind of making movies in a variety of different genres. There was a point at which there was a lot of kind of Mad Maxy kind of ripoffs, and he did a couple of those. If there was a genre that kind of had a brief blip of popularity in Italy, chances are Enzo G. Castellari made one of them.
Classic Italian hack, although I suppose maybe people would argue towards the higher end of that spectrum.
Yep, I think so. And I think, like, there are certain directors who really excelled in one thing. Maybe I don't think it's spaghetti westerns, with the exception of maybe Chioma.
Chioma's
you know,
good,
the rest of them are they're not as great. But Chioma's wonderful. And then
with what's his name, merely taking fashion tips from Franco Nero in the second of these films as well.
Yes, yeah. Well, we'll see. I mean, Franco Nero appears in. No, I think Franco Nero stars in Chioma. You might be thinking of Mañana. Mañana is like the ripoff of Chioma, which stars Maurizio Merli once again.
There we go. Is that the one with that's the one with the boomerang, isn't it?
Yes.
Right.
And we're going to be coming back to these actors at the end of this. We'll be talking quite a bit about Maurizio Merli and Franco Nero in the latter movie. But basically, there are certain things that kind of, you know, mark an Enzo G. Castellari movie, and slow motion is one of them. Right. He loves his slow motion. He was a very good action director. I
suppose his big claim to fame for the mainstream would be having directed the original Inglorious Bastards as well.
Yes. So he did a couple of war movies. But my favorites of his movies are mostly the ones that he made with Franco Nero, that were like the cop kind of movies, or the you know, Street Law is an amazing film. You know, High Crime is a great movie. That's kind of his version of the Gene Hackman one. French Connection, kind of his take on French Connection. But anyway, so I feel like he was given the job of somebody in Italy came to him and said, like, hey, can you just make
they all speak like that in Italy, don't they?
Oh yeah, they do. Yeah. You know, they must have just photocopied the script to Jaws and crossed out some of the names.
Well, right. Okay. So let's talk about this, because this is something that I have a slight bone of contention to pick. So, so this film came out. This is The Last Shark, right? Great one.
Yes.
Squali.
Squali.
Yeah, came out in 1982, which would have been after Jaws 1 and 2, and just before Jaws 3.
Yeah.
Right. Which I'm guessing was what it was. It seems a bit late to be jumping on Jaws 2. I'm guessing it's jumping on the forthcoming Jaws
Yes.
3 bandwagon. So there had been a whole bunch of other Jaws ripoffs in the interim.
Mm-hmm.
So, and of course, the reason we're talking about this on Crack Crack as well is because it's kind of tricky to track down. Because as soon as it came out, I think Universal had some kind of injunction to get it pulled from US theaters. And there was a DVD a few years ago, but that seems to have been somehow suppressed as well, right? So this is even though it's one of the more visible Italian Jaws ripoffs. It's one of the ones that is more tricky to see via legal channels, right? Surprisingly.
Yeah.
But for me, I think it was somewhat unfairly picked on. Like,
okay.
I mean, it's not as if this is any more Jaws ripoff than a whole bunch of other Jaws ripoffs, right? Like, it's, you know, I mean, they don't even follow the pattern of the three people on the boat. They've just got Quint and Roy Scheider's character, right? They switch Richard Dreyfuss for a chick.
Yes.
And it's a wind.
not a bad decision. I might have done that too.
Right. Windsurfing regatta. And you know, this seems like splitting hairs, but in this world of ripoffs, I don't quite understand why they got off their horse about this one.
But when I think about, I mean, like, you know, like I wouldn't say like a movie like Tintorera, Tiger Shark is a ripoff of Jaws.
No, that's
I mean, like,
that's totally different. That's totally
there are other greatly. That's, you know, one of the few things. I mean, both of these movies could have been improved slightly by the appearance of Hugo Stiglitz, but everything is improved by the appearance of
Susan George.
Oh yes. But like, can you think, like, off the top of your head, can you think of I mean, not counting something like Cruel Jaws that comes quite a bit later on,
right?
And just wholesale takes footage out of Jaws and this movie actually.
Well, I suppose now, if you actually think about it off the top of your head, it is kind of a bit tricky. But I mean,
because Vic Morrow's character in this movie, like, he has to have been asked, "Can you just do Robert Shaw?"
Well, I think they asked him, hey, Vic.
Yeah.
How's it going? All right, good. So, you know, the Quint in the Jaws, we like it. It's a good, huh? It's a very good. But can you do a Scottish accent, but not quite? Like, I don't know what accent Morrow's doing in this film.
Yes.
But
yes, Scottish-esque for sure.
It's weird because I've always thought Vic Morrow has kind of a weird voice anyway. Like, he's got a very difficult voice to place. Like, it's difficult to say, oh, he's from here, or he's from there. So it took me a while to even figure out that he wasn't just doing Vic Morrow. It was like, after a while, I was like, oh, hang on now, is he a bit Scottish? Is he like?
Yeah.
And then like finally, when I tagged, I get it now. But yeah, it's it's no Scotland I'm aware of.
No.
But no, I suppose you're quite right in a way. If you're actually forced to, what else is there then in terms of? I suppose it's that whole sideways, like if you switch out, like Piranha, for example, is very much Jaws ripoff.
Right.
The Piranha, a shark, and there's the tentacles.
Oh yeah, sure.
And that kind of, I'm sure that people are screaming at the screen. I'm sure there's like a whole bunch of shark movies that for some reason are not coming.
Okay.
Now,
but that would have come before the last shark.
Yeah, or it's just I might be right. It didn't scream ridiculously liberty-taking Jaws ripoff, especially 7 years removed from Jaws as well. Do you know what I mean? Or do you?
No, I do. I do think it for whatever reason it was scapegoated somehow.
Right.
For sure.
It might have been a timing thing. I mean, I don't know how close to the publicity or how much publicity there was for Jaws 3.
3D.
Yeah. So, I mean, if it was Great White 3D, then I'd kind of see it, right? Or yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess to get into it, we won't go into it in great detail, but basically you've got, I mean, another thing that, you know, that is just funny, but like, so, you know, James Franciscus plays the lead character.
Right.
And
Planet of the Apes sequels.
Yeah, the only place that I really know him from is from Beneath Planet of the Apes. So his very last scene in the movie kind of called that to mind. But yeah, so, but he plays a writer of, I'm guessing, nautical tales, whose name is Peter Benton. And so it's just another, you know.
Well, that's another thing. They didn't go back to the book. They didn't have like Vic Morrow having an affair with his, because it's his wife who ends up on the boat with him, right?
Right.
Yeah. So they didn't go back to that part of the book.
No, that's true. That's true. And
yeah,
so
he's not the chief of police for a start.
No, he's not. No, he's not.
Totally different.
It's a different movie. Yes, exactly. Nobody sings "Show Me the Way to Go Home."
They've never even heard of Jaws.
No. And so we've got this this guy called Wells, who's our well, he's the mayor, but then he's running for governor as well, or something like that, I think, right? And he's putting on this windsurfing regatta,
right?
Which was a big thing, I think, in the early 80s.
Yeah. I couldn't even hear his name over the boo hiss.
Right. Boo hiss. Yes. And then he has, like, I can't remember his name, but he's an actor you'll see a lot around this time and a little before. He's kind of the poor man's Lee Van Cleef, like Poor Man Cleef. Yeah.
That's a great name to have, Poor Man Cleef.
But he seems to be a kind of a campaign advisor, and he's the guy who gets probably the most famous shot in the movie, the most wonderful shot in the movie, where he's in the boat shouting at everyone, you know, and the shark comes up underneath,
yes,
and hits and the boat explodes.
Yeah.
And his mannequin kind of...
This shark has dynamite attached to his nose.
To its nose, yes. Because it just blows stuff up.
The shark, I mean, again, if we're going by Jaws comparisons, the shark ain't bad. I mean, it's not as if Jaws was amazingly realistic.
No.
They just showed
the animatronic one,
right?
Yes, yes.
I'd say this shark is about as good looking as Bruce was in the first film.
Meaning not very good looking.
Yeah. But you know,
it's slightly deflated, like, you know, Macy's Day balloon kind of quality about it.
Right.
But yes, and then we get Vic Morrow as our kind of poor man's Quint, as we mentioned before.
It also rips off Orca as well, because there's a woman getting her leg bitten off, right? If you remember, Bo Derek got her leg bitten off in Orca.
Okay, right. And in this case, it's Franciscus's daughter who gets her.
Yeah, and then Orca in itself, I think, was ripped off by Jaws: The Revenge, right? There was kind of...
Oh, yeah. I mean, it is like it's like a shark feeding frenzy of shark movies where they all just
which
cannibalize each other.
Yeah, Cruel Jaws is the
king.
The distillation is that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a shame that's widely available. Otherwise, we talk about it on Film Crack Crack.
And it's amazing that it is, given that it, unlike this movie, actually just cuts footage out of other people's movies.
I know.
And just passes it off as its own.
That's why I'm saying. That's why I mean, don't get me wrong. Last Shark, Great White is not very good, and no matter how much you like Enzo G. Castellari, he's not Steven Spielberg at the height of his powers, right?
And also, his heart, I feel like his heart's not in it.
No, I agree with you.
I really feel like he's going through, and even, I'll tell you, I feel that...
you could almost hear him sighing behind the camera.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah, and...
I am 50 years old, what am I doing?
And then even the soundtrack. I mean, because it's fascinating, because both of these movies have soundtracks by my favorite people in the world, Guido and Maurizio De Angelis, right? And the soundtrack to The Shark Hunter is one of my favorite soundtracks ever, and we'll get into that later. Yeah. We'll get into it later, but because I have a very special relationship to that soundtrack.
Okay.
But the soundtrack even feels like And they never slough off a job, but it even feels like they were again given the job of like, can you do the Jaws theme, but not quite the Jaws theme, like at 2 other notes. And so you get this like, it's a bit more like doodle-doo.
It's a bit more jaunty, isn't it?
Doodle-doo. And it's just, it's not great. So everyone just feels like they're kind of going through the motions. And then, although hats off to Vic Morrow, actually, he's really trying.
He's taking it very seriously. Maybe he had a premonition of his death later that year.
Yes, he was going to make the most of it. And then he's in is it 1990 The Bronx Warriors?
Right.
Which is also directed by Enzo G. And then one of my favorite actors is in this, and he's a guy who's like, well, he's one of my favorite actors for just 2 movies. And that's the guy who plays the sleazy media guy.
Oh yeah.
Yes, at the end, which is, I mean, so you want to talk about movies ripping off movies? Is that not the end scene of Die Hard, made some 7 years later, of him literally with his arm around his wife, walking up and the guy sticking the microphone in his face, and him punching him in the face? That's the same scene.
You think Bruce was in his trailer watching The Last Shark on the?
I suspect so.
And then he walks over to John McTiernan and says, "Hey, John, I just saw this awesome film."
I think so. So, talking about again, who's ripping off who?
Right.
The Italians have got a bad reputation, but sometimes
How
it's
about
more.
that scene in Die Hard with a Vengeance where Jeremy Irons gets his bikini taken off by hand puppet fish?
Yes, exactly. So the reason I like, so that's Giancarlo Prete, who I like him for 2 things. He's in Street Law. So that's in fact, both the other movies I'm going to talk about are Castellari. He's in Street Law, where he plays this mechanic who befriends Franco Nero's character as the movie goes on. And he's kind of initially involved with the gang that beats up Franco Nero at the beginning of the movie, but then they become friends. At the end of the movie, he's in this warehouse and he's been shot, and Franco Nero's cradling his head. And they had this plan at some point that Nero was going to open a garage with this guy. And so Nero is doing this heartfelt, incredible soliloquy about, and over there we will put the sports cars, and there will be a place for snacks, as this guy that dies in his arms. And so the last words this guy hears is, as there will be a place for snacks.
What a way to go. That sounds good to me.
It's a fantastic.
Mustache just brushing your forehead as you drift off into the abyss.
So he's brilliant. And then he's the lead in Il Nuovi Barbari, also known as Warriors of the Wasteland.
All right, okay, yeah.
Which is the one where he has the Pop-O-Matic top on his sports car that he drives around in the desert.
The new Barbarians, right?
Yes, yeah. And so he's also therefore the Mad Max hero who gets put into a machine that stretches his arms out and bends him forwards while Luigi Montefiore gives him the high hard one from behind, which I had never seen in an action movie before. I'd never seen the hero. I mean, yeah, sure, it happens to what's his face in Deliverance, but he's not Burt Reynolds.
Obviously, you didn't go to as many screenings at the Mineshaft Club as I did.
No, I'm guessing not. Anyway, so for those 2 reasons, I'm a big fan of Giancarlo Prete. So happy to see him here.
Also, I suppose, I suppose the only real highlight of the film is Mr. Boo Hiss getting the bottom half of him eaten off, hanging from a toy helicopter, right? I suppose that's which and then the shark gets the helicopter, which again leads us to Cruel Jaws.
Yes,
but Cruel Jaws ups the ante, because here the helicopter is kind of hovering near the surface of the water to try and help the guy out, and that's how the shark gets it. It's kind of plausible, right? But if I remember correctly, in Cruel Jaws, the shark leaps straight up into the water, grabs onto the helicopter, at which some point someone actually has the line of dialogue, we're gonna need a bigger helicopter, which is just genius.
Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, it's regardless of the fact we're not talking about it here today. If you haven't seen Cruel Jaws, go see Cruel Jaws.
Check it out.
So I actually watched this today or earlier today with Jen, and so she was really taken by several things. She was really taken by the scene where people are wandering around the beach and there's this kind of box on the beach.
Oh, yes, Uncle Sam guy. Yes, yeah. I made a note of that. That guy is, what the fuck is he doing?
Like Tom Petty in a box. Like, he just opens this box and this guy playing this
doing like a bad Dylan impersonation.
Yeah.
Which is basically Tom Petty. Sorry, I'm not a big fan.
Yeah, there you go.
Dressed as Uncle Sam. It's like, that jumped out at me as well.
And Jen was like, did that happen? Did people, I was like, you were around in the early 80s. I don't remember it, but maybe.
Because I couldn't even figure out, like sometimes you see something weird in a movie and it's just a weird version of something. But I've never seen anything remotely like that. Like at a windsurfing regatta, you would have a musician in a box.
Right.
Never mind that he's dressed like Uncle Sam. Like let's just
begins on command. Only when somebody opens the window in the box.
It just seemed like it seemed like something maybe Enzo or someone had been to the US on holiday one time and hung out with like a real bunch of weirdos who did weird shit. And I was like, this is the real America. They do this. It's like, was it Sergio Leone apparently?
Oh, yes. Duck you sucker.
Duck you sucker was all Americans say that all the time. Duck you sucker. They always say that. So it's kind of, something like that I'm wondering. A bit strange cultural appropriation, which hasn't been actually appropriated from anywhere. It's just been made up.
Yeah. Oh, the other thing, again, to give credit to the wife, she was really interested in the, so James Franciscus wears this like bright red wetsuit for quite a large amount of the movie, which has got this black triangle, like perfectly encapsulating his kind of like budgie smuggling tightness of this, like it's a very interesting visual choice. And we had this conversation about was the Franciscus Triangle as well known as the Bermuda Triangle at the time, but just it's just strange.
I think I'd like to watch films with your wife. She's interesting things.
Yeah, she does.
Did she enjoy The Last Shark, or did she?
He did, but I was telling her that the better of the two. I said we should actually sit down and watch Shark, because she likes her Franco Nero as well.
Okay, right.
That's one of the.
Who doesn't? Who with any good sense doesn't like Franco Nero?
Yeah, and then there's also the son, the curly-headed William Katz-looking kid.
Right. The rival for the regatta prize. Right?
Yes. Yeah, and he's been mocked by the DJ because his daddy will just buy him the.
You should watch this with your old man as well. He'd have some regatta input.
Actually, it's funny. I was gonna say that I was thinking about my dad obviously as I watched it, because he used to win regattas, and there is a process. Because Jen was asking, she's like, "How do they get them lined up on the water?" And I was like, that is weird. I don't know. And I've been to regattas. First time I ever drank cider was when I was 11 at a regatta.
Was there a man dressed as Uncle Sam in a box?
There was, actually, now that I think about it. It was in Bray in Ireland. Anyway, I also love the fact that they were so happy with the shot of poor man Clive getting blasted out of the boat that they included it in the movie twice, because we see it being reviewed.
Speaking of shots, there was one shot as well. I was thinking, is this satire? Is this clever foreshadowing, or is it just I'm kind of looking for things? But there's a shot.
Is this the barbecue shot?
Yes.
Yeah, I noticed that too, and I wrote it down.
So so it's like at the party it's like there's some, I don't know, I can't remember now, but it's just a couple.
I think it's a couple, like a canoodling couple or whatever.
Yeah, and it's kind of framed in something, and then as the camera pulls out, you realize it's been filmed through like the edge of like a barbecue grill, right? As it pulls back, there's cooking meat in the
meat, like raw meat.
So these are, Also,
I assumed it was intentional.
Also, more than that, I just thought it's a really well done shot. Like, it never goes out of focus. Like, it's a good shot. I mean,
yeah,
it's one of those shots. It's almost like artistry that that at the service of something not worth very good, but still, you know, Enzo is trying his best, right? To
do something with this.
Yeah, get his jollies somehow.
And then we also have that weird scene where the shark decides to headbutt a bunch of rocks into trapping them in like an sea grotto thing.
But that's the other interesting thing as well, is in Jaws, they never attempt to scuba dive and hunt the shark.
That's true. Yeah.
So that's another massive difference. The more I'm convinced they never even heard of Jaws.
No, they never. They certainly wouldn't have seen it.
Jaws, what is that? I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else there is to say except that we get. I guess there's a dynamite belt that's important that features in the movie.
Yes, yeah, good Vic again, giving him, it's interesting. It's actually I think that's my favorite bit of the film in a way. Because what I like about it is it's different from an American movie, where in an American movie it would be, go on, get out of here, go on, I'm done for. It's that, right? It's the self-sacrifice. What I like about this, it's a much more cynical, like, oh man, am I gonna feed his dead body to the fish? But it'll work. And I like that. I like that it has that edge of, like, I feel like a total, animal doing this. Like, he was a good man. He had a dodgy Scottish accent, but he was a good man. And I'm gonna feed him to the. So I like that. I like that. That's a very Italian, or at least non-Spielbergian take.
Yes, yeah, for sure. It's funny. I wondered if there was a couple of shots in the shark cage that looked like they might have come from the documentaries we watched, and I wondered whether or not, because I guess if Bruno Valati was the premier kind of person in Italy to go to for actual footage of sharks interacting, because again, just like Jaws itself, there's a radical difference between the stuff we see underwater filmed with a real shark and then the animatronic shark that pops out of the water every now and again. I mean, I do quite like the bit near the end where, Massimo Vanni shows up right near the end, like 10 minutes before the end of the movie, shows up dressed all in denim, like as a shark hunter who does nothing but just like get killed right away. It's hilariously pointless.
I think it's worth pointing out that even though this isn't Jaws, it's not quite, like you mentioned, the disparity between the stock footage. It's not that, but I mean, I have seen other films which are, you're in the bayou, and then the shark is clearly swimming in a pool. You can even see like a ladder at the surface of the water. Like, I've seen that in a whole bunch of them.
No,
not
sure.
That jarring.
Sure.
But I do apologize, viewers, for what's going on with my bladder today. I don't know, but I'm going to have to take another Waz. So Nick is going to fill. He's either going to give us his overall thoughts on Last Shark, or he's going to do Shark Hunter, or do both. But he's going to do something, and I'm not going to be here for it. But I can hear you. So go ahead.
Okay. So maybe what we'll do the Last Shark. So it ends with a wonderful scene, basically, as Flad's already said, of James Franciscus has just fed the dead body of Vic Morrow's Quint-esque character into the mouth of the giant shark, and then stands on this kind of floating platform. It's what's left of a pier that the shark has earlier towed away with a bunch of kids on it, and Massimo Vanni, who, if you don't know, is a recurring kind of bit part actor in Italian films, often playing kind of mercenaries and that kind of character. Tall, thin guy with a big nose. And so anyway, Franciscus, for some reason, dramatically leaps sideways off of this thing. Like he could just, I assume, detonate the explosives without doing a sideways dive into the air, almost doing a kind of like, yeah, you caught all that then? Yeah. Again, bringing me back to what I said before, you know, like damn you to hell. Like there's almost a Charlton Heston-y, you know,
right.
Right. It's wonderfully pointless. Like there's no reason for him to dive sideways off the thing and blow it up while he's in the air. But it's rad.
He looks good though. He looks dashing.
It's cinematic.
There. Yeah. Charlton never did this.
No, exactly. And then I think I'll give, again, maybe, unless you have something else you want to say, I might give my wife the last word on this.
Okay, no, I was just going to say, I mean, just my overall, I mean, this isn't great. Not even really as a trashy one. It has its moments, and like you said, if you're kind of obsessed with this kind of, if you're obsessed with rip-off cinema, which is this is. I'm not saying it's not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, you know, it's one of many, right? So
yeah.
If you are obsessed with rip-off cinema and like how, you know, comparing and how they do things, it's kind of work. But in terms of a casual,
you could do a lot worse.
You could do worse, but then again, you could do so much trash as well, like Cruel Jaws and like that, right? So this is a slightly bland. It's not trashy enough. It doesn't have enough spice for me, and it's certainly no Jaws. So for me, it's like if this is for you, it's for you. You already know, I think, but it's not a film that we're gonna bring up as like, hey, you layman viewer looking for something a bit off the beaten track that you should try out. This isn't that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's all I've got to say about it. I won't be watching it again, I don't think.
No, I think I'm done with The Last Shark. But I think what Jennifer was most taken with was Vic Morrow's sweaters. She was captivated by the quality of knit that he seemed to always be rocking. And she was wondering at the very end, when they put the sweater around the wife, it looked like it might have been Vic Morrow's from earlier in the movie. And Jen was like, well, that's a nice way to remember the smell of Vic Morrow's Scotsman.
Well, it's cold on those highlands, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's damp.
The highlands of the moon, where he comes from. McQuint.
Okay, so the last movie we're going to talk about is Il Cacciatore di Squali, or the Shark Hunter. But it shouldn't be confused with Il Chicken Cacciatore, which is that Warren Oates movie about the Italian chef who takes a vow of silence until he wins that chicken stew competition.
This is a joke.
No, you've not. Oh, well worth seeing.
Okay.
Anyway, so this is
Apologies for Nick's attempt at humor, by the way.
Yes. Trying to bring some levity. There's a so this is made a couple of years before 1979.
79, I think, isn't it? Yeah.
79, yeah. And so it's another shark movie, sort of, made by the same director, Enzo G. Castellari, and in my opinion, a much better film. I mean, it's still not a great movie, but
it's such a different type of film as well. It's got a much more laid back vibe, right? It plays in a different way. Like if Great White or Last Shark is trying to pump up the suspense, this film's kind of a different beast, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. So I mean, maybe what we'll do is because it's not a particularly complicated story. So maybe I'll just really quickly kind of explain what's going on. So our lead.
Warn me, by the way, are there any more strained gags coming up? Okay.
No. You can rest easy, friends.
Brace
yourself. No.
Right. Okay.
So Franco Nero is our lead. He plays a guy called Mike Di Donato, who's an Italian American who used to work for some shadowy organization after he lost his wife and kid. And that's a very common Franco Nero. Like, in fact, I almost thought that the footage of his wife and kid getting run down might have actually come from another movie.
A bit of a non sequitur, really, isn't it? But he's now, of course, the gringo.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So he lives in Mexico, and he's got the fantastic Farrah Fawcett wig kind of tied to his head the whole movie, because I'm 99% sure that's not Franco Nero's hair.
It's strange as well. I mean, I don't know. Gringo, does gringo specifically mean white man or foreigner? What is gringo? What is the actual etymology?
Nobody knows the etymology of gringo for sure. But yeah, generally speaking, it means like, yeah, a foreigner, or, you know.
Well, my feeling of it as well is it's like very white man, right? And there's something about, even though obviously it's not Spain, it's Italian, but you have that kind of Mediterranean link. And Franco Nero, who pretty much always dubs his own voice, sounds super Italian.
Yes, yes.
Something a bit weird about them calling him
gringo.
Gringo, isn't there? Is that just it just doesn't seem?
No. Yeah, he seems less gringo for sure than
that. You
maybe
think they find something else to call him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so he's living down in Mexico now, where he seems to hunt sharks, and
Werner Poca.
Yeah.
That's who should be called Gringo. He's super Gringo.
Oh yes, yes.
He's
very nervy.
Yeah.
Very sweaty and nervy. He's great.
I always like him ever since I saw Mosquito with him in. He's interesting as well. He seems to have he's done casting for a lot of films. And at a certain point, I remember listening to the Rialto Report podcast. They did an interview with is his name Jeff Stryker? He was like the gay porn star.
Yes, yeah.
After Death, which has Werner Pockart in as well. And interestingly, apparently, Werner Pockart was like Pockart?
However you say his name, yeah. I'm not sure.
Kind of, strange, low-budget Klaus Kinski. Klaus Kinski was very much the low-budget Klaus Kinski.
It's already, yeah.
But going for that kind of weird cross between Kinski and Peter Lorre or something like that. And
very nervy, sweaty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently he was a huge Jeff Stryker fan. And was, he had, I don't know, power tools in his personal connection. And he was responsible for bringing Jeff Stryker into After Death. And apparently it was very much a kind of, bit of a kind of Svengali wannabe relationship where, he wanted to,
mentor him.
Stryker under his wing. So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on with Werner Pockart, I think.
Yeah, and he's great. So he plays basically one of the underlings of so I guess to get into the plot, basically, at some point in the past, so Franco Nero's wife and kid get run down. I guess he then joins the organization, which is often basically a pseudonym for the mafia or some kind of organized crime. Had been doing flights, maybe doing like money laundering or something like that, and this plane has gone down in the ocean that he was on, full of money, and then he disappears, and then he's living as a kind of beach bum. Like, he even has a rope around his jeans, like he doesn't wear a belt, and he hunts sharks. And so Mark Forrest,
interesting way of hunting sharks as well. He seems to. So this is the opening scene of the film.
Yeah, great scene.
Is Franco Nero like concentrating very, very hard, it seems, and then you could cut to shots of sharks, and then back to Franco Nero. So it's almost like he seems to have some kind of psychic connection or something.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I guess the shark's in the right position, or so Franco Nero jumps to his feet
Mhm.
and runs the length of this beach. I don't know why he didn't just sit closer, but runs the length of the beach. I'm sensing this is a little bit of the like James Franciscus saying, "I will look cool if I jump sideways." Franco Nero is like, "I will look very cool, no? Run down beach and I kill the shark." And so it's a balmy scene, really. It's interesting. Yes, he has it's almost supernatural. His
and he grabs a rope and starts trying to yank the shark back, like by the power of his own arms, yank the shark all the way back in, and then doesn't actually succeed.
Very weird. It's like I couldn't quite tell, because everyone keeps talking about him in these terms as well, like, oh, he's just a gringo, but he's the most amazing shark hunter in the world. And then I was thinking, he's not very good at it though, really. Like, he puts a lot of energy in and he looks cool, but he's going home sharkless most days, I would have thought.
Yes. Although in fairness, he does later in the movie parachute off like the back of a boat into the ocean on top of a shark that he then wrestles with his bare hands, and it's a rad scene. Like it's awesome in every way. But anyway, but it turns out that really he has this kind of, he's not really shark hunting anyway. What he's really doing is trying to figure out a way. He's figured out where the plane went down full of money, and he's trying to figure out a way of getting down in there and bringing the money back up. But meanwhile, there's this another proper gringo, Mark, an actor called Mark Forrest. He plays a character called Donovan. He showed up and he's kind of asking around, and he seems to be very interested in whatever Nero's doing. And Mark Forrest is an interesting guy for me for a couple of reasons. The first thing I ever saw him in, like his face in, is in an old episode of Star Trek. He plays Apollo. But when I was watching the episode with Jennifer, I was like, this guy's voice is driving me insane. I know his voice so well, but not coming out of that face. But this is clearly shot with synchronous sound. I don't think he's been dubbed. I mean, occasionally they used to dub,
Right.
So it turns out that Mark Forrest moved to Italy literally the year after he made that episode of Star Trek.
Yeah, he was in Peplums, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. But he also became he's a voice in virtually every piece of Eurotrash ever made.
Right. Okay. So he was one of the dubbers. He was
one of the stock.
Machista, whatever the fuck.
Yes, right. He was a stock dubber, and so he dubbed everything Maurizio Merli ever said in English.
Okay, right.
So I'm watching this guy, but the voice that's coming out of his mouth is Maurizio Merli's voice in my mind. I'm just like,
right. Well, no. So, I think the reason it didn't is he's because his character isn't the verge of a heart attack characters that Merli played. It's toned down a little bit, right? So he's not delivering it at quite that pitch. Right?
Yes. And also the funny thing is, of course, this whole movie's been dubbed anyway. It's an Italian movie, so it's just Mark Forrest doing his dubbing job, but on his own acting for a change, right?
I wonder if he dubbed his Peplum films.
I would imagine he would have dubbed anything that he acted in. Why wouldn't he?
Well, sometimes, available if he's on another set shooting something else, they're in a hurry. They've got someone else. It does happen from time to time. People didn't always dub themselves, right?
Right. But what's interesting is
Nero, who's famous for always dubbing himself. Isn't there a few examples?
In the earliest movies, yes.
Right.
In Django and Massacre Time, there's a couple at the very beginning, But Mark Forrest is also, if you have watched any dubbed anime in, say, the last 40 years, you have likely heard him.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Because he is one of the mainstays, and he's in his 70s now, and he's still dubbing anime.
Right.
So I also knew his voice from things like,
lucrative work.
Yeah. So yeah, he's had a career as a voice actor pretty much his whole life. But anyway, so it's kind of rare to see him, to be honest, to actually see him acting.
Right.
So yeah, he's there. He's trying to figure out what's going on, and then we get Eduardo Fajardo, who is, I assume, is actually Spanish. I don't think he's.
I think he might.
But
He's in a bunch of Spanish films, so.
Yes, yeah, and he's acted famously with Franco Nero before, because he's the lead villain in Django.
Right. But this was all shot down in Mexico, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah. And did you read that story about what happened when, because this is Italy, so it's awesome. Eduardo Fajardo had the only English language copy of the script.
Okay.
In his luggage, because they only made the one, and he was to bring it with him. Right. And the airline lost his bags. And so he arrived in Mexico, and there was so they had to sit down and basically rewrite the script on the fly.
How about I run across the beach?
Exactly. And so I guess in this case, Mark Forrest, being that he always rewrote his own lines to make them sound like something somebody speaking English would actually say, he basically wrote all the dialogue in the movie.
Okay, interesting.
Uncredited, I think, but.
Yeah, no, I don't think he does get credit. He also got Jorge Luke.
Yes,
in here,
who plays Acapulco. And so I have to say that any character that almost always enters a scene dancing is the character that I'm going to fall in love with, because every time he comes on screen, it's like, it's this.
Yeah, he should have been in Footloose.
Yes, yeah, he's brilliant.
I like Kevin Bacon. Footloose with Jorge Luke would be a very different film.
And he's actually Mexican. I think he's one of the only people in the movie who is in the leads, like in the lead roles.
He's very much as well in that category of, like, we mentioned this before, but it's funny because you have all these jobbing actors, right? But there's certain actors, like we mentioned Klaus Kinski earlier, right? Which is like, if you wanted a really weird, interesting journey through a certain period in world cinema, watch the entire Klaus Kinski filmography. Yes. Like, that would be a really worthwhile thing to do. Yeah. Go in some. I think Jorge Luke is in that kind of, like, look at his list of things he was in. You're like, oh, he's in that, he's in that, oh, he's in that, and he's in that over here, and then other things like, what's that? What the hell is that? So if you sat down, you could have a real interesting film education by just, for example, following the career of Jorge Luke, right?
And then I guess last, and maybe kind of not most interesting, but interesting, is the fact that the kind of the main thug in the movie, Eduardo Fajardo's kind of right-hand man, is the director. Is Enzo G. Castellari.
Yeah. Did he do much cameos? Was he like a Hitchcocky kind of?
Yeah, he did occasionally, but I think the thing that I remember seeing him in most was in there's a documentary about spaghetti westerns that he kind of is the voice, like, that he appears in and kind of talks about the making of spaghetti westerns that was made right back in the 60s.
Right.
So it's one of the few places. And I'm always surprised when I see him, because he's quite like, he's built like a brick shithouse.
Yeah.
You know?
It's not to see him in that context as well, because like you said earlier, you don't necessarily think of him as Mr. Spaghetti Western, right? It's like not the genre you attached
immediately.
But like you said, all these guys, they at least did one Peplum, one. Actually, I don't know if Castellari goes back as far as the.
No, he might start in the spaghettis.
But it's like Rings of a Tree. You like slice the Italian director over in half and see how far. He did the pep. He did assistant director on one.
I mean, exactly.
He probably did that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And something with Barbara Steele. Yes.
But I was surprised, just like, I'd forgotten how kind of like big he is, you know, like, I mean, he's not a tall man, but just like,
right. So the major film, so just to get to the main part of that plot. So basically there's a whole bunch of this downed money, which is in a cave full of sleeping sharks. And you need to go down there with a big Hoover and hoover it all out. Just kind of cool. Yes. I quite like that.
Yes.
So this is more than it is a Jaws ripoff. This is a ripoff of that film, The Shark's Cave, right? That came out the year before this, maybe, Tonino Ricci.
Okay, I don't even know about this movie, so this is news to me.
The Shark's Cave is a very weird. It's like a cross between a Jaws ripoff and those Bermuda Triangle speculation films of the time.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there's a cave full of sleeping sharks. There's no money in it though, so they added the heist element. Yeah, but they're looking for something. Actually, it might be money. I can't remember. It's a very weird film, and the shark's a psychic as well. It's a very strange.
Okay.
And there's a shark cult that goes out. There's like this shark. There's a boat full of men, women, and children who go out to where this shark cave is, and they all just jump in the water like Jonestown style and drown themselves.
Okay.
Very weird movie. You'd probably get a kick.
Yeah, no, it sounds great.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's one of those films. It's one of those films like it's best to catch it like at the latest possible time of the night, like 3 a.m. or something like that, and you're like half asleep, and you're on your last beer, and your bed's full of crumbs, and like
no.
That sounds like perfect. Watch it at that time.
Yes,
and then wake up and imagine, did I dream that film? Or I think it was made back to back. Tonino Ricci made that, and there's another film called Encounters in the Abyss or something like that, and that's another weird Bermuda Triangle-y. But that's with these things that it's all luck and you got to get the dosage just right. And Shark's Cave kind of trippy and weird, and you feel stoned watching it. And Encounters in the Abyss, if I remember, is just quite boring.
Yes, yeah. Tonino Ricci is a very inconsistent director.
I mean, he makes Enzo G seem like Spielberg on Jaws, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
And the other steal, I'm guessing maybe, is the attempted sniper assassination through a glass elevator on the outside of a building. Isn't that in, is it Cold Sweat? The Charles Bronson, like Eurocrime film, Terrence Young directed it.
Yeah, but it's also in another Charles Bronson movie.
I might be getting confused then. Is it not?
It's the Sergio Salima one. Shoot, it's, what the hell is it called?
I might be wrong. I might be confusing that with Cold Sweat.
It might. I think one of the titles for it is The Family, and it's got a very Godfather-looking font. But then that's not. There's like another title for it. But it's Sergio Salima did a couple of spaghetti crime films.
See, I might be wrong. I might be remembering that and thinking of Cold Sweat, or it's in both. I mean, I think Jill Ireland is in both of them as well. Yes, that's where the confusion.
And she's in the elevator for sure when that scene.
It might be in both. I wouldn't be surprised, right?
Yeah,
that's not. Yeah, okay. I'm not going to lose sleep over.
Okay, all right.
That's fine. It's probably in other films as well because it's quite a good idea to try and put someone in a glass elevator. I know I've tried it a few times.
So. I mean, I think we kind of, the thing I think maybe talk about most of all is my relationship to the soundtrack of this movie, because I think the soundtrack kicks ass.
The Angelus brothers.
Yes, front to back. And so when I lived in Japan, but I think the year before I probably met you, I was working down in Kamakura, and I would take the.
Remember when you first met me as well? I danced into your line of sight.
Yeah, I know. That was really it. Yeah. And you had that mustache at the time. Okay. But yeah, so so I used to take the train down from Oimachi Station, the Kei into Hoga line, all the way down to Kamakura, because I worked in Kamakura for that year, and it's a long train ride.
Right.
Like from door to door, it was well over an hour, and it was like 45 minutes in the train. And so I was tired all the time, and I realized I had to find a way to kind of go to sleep fast when I got on the train, and then wake up when I would get to the right, like wake up at the right stop.
Yeah, that gift that some salarymen seem to have got, right? So
what I did was I used this album called The Adventure Film Music of Guido and Maurizio De Angelis.
Right.
It's got four soundtracks on it. It's got the soundtrack to Kioma.
Yeah.
It's got the soundtrack to this movie.
Yeah.
It's got the soundtrack to some TV show they did about like Captain Cook,
Okay.
And then there's something else. There's a fourth, more of a, I don't know, again, some sort of upbeaty, almost sounds like it's something Terence Hill would have been in.
Right.
And it's all kind of mellow. I don't know if you remember the soundtrack to Kioma, but it's very
yeah, it's
fake Leonard Cohen.
Right. Yeah, it's very low key, isn't it? It's not yeah. It's not your typical macaroni sound, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So as a result, I pretty quickly learned to just put that album on and just immediately pass out, like Pavlovian style, just like gone.
Right.
And
so
then
as you approach Kamakura.
Yeah, and then it would be the end at the, I think the, basically, yes.
Right.
And I would kind of snap out of it and then wake up.
No, I have a thing for, I love these kind of, where there's an overrided, like, what is that? Is that the bass drum? Is that the one on the floor, the one that you step on? I love things that have that slightly overrided, little bit too loud, little bit, even slightly on and off beat, right? Like it's not quite dead on. Anything with that kind of is just, yeah, I think I'm gonna have to, if I can actually edit that, I might try and put a bit of it in at the end.
Yeah, please do.
If not, yeah, you should check out the soundtrack to this film. It is a lot of fun. It's just, it's like going, if you went to a disco, but it was full of like trashed homeless people, is how I imagine it. Like you wouldn't go there to pick it. It would just be after the disco had ended, it's just devastation. It's just like apocalypse disco.
And there's something that they do. I'm not quite sure how they do it, but they almost make it sound like they're like pushing the limits of what your stereo can handle. Like that, it's like the sound's bleeding.
Yeah, exactly. It is.
And
it's all in the red, isn't it? It's all in the red.
It sounds like that on the soundtrack album. Like, you know, just the same kind of level of intensity. But it does have the downside that when I turn the movie on, I'm almost immediately starting to pass out. Because I'm just like, oh yeah. And then, I mean, add to that the fact that I also listen to that album regularly in Mexico and Okinawa, where I feel at my most relaxed because it's all palm trees and, you know, white sand beaches. And so, yeah, I must have fallen asleep 8 times while watching this movie, even though I love the movie, but like that soundtrack is just, it's like.
But when you reached Kamakura, did you leap out of the doors and run across the beach with
I did. As fast as I could, my blue eyes blazing. Yeah.
So, it's a fun film, but it's not just the soundtrack. The soundtrack really, like, if you didn't have that, I don't think the film would work anywhere near as good, because it's, like you said, it's a great film. It's got cool pulp imagery, like the hoovering up and the sleeping sharks, and I like all that. But there is an awful lot of tropical laid-back filler. But but because it's Franco Nero, and because you've got this sound, like every now and then, actually, I don't think you're alone in that. I think lots of people would be slightly drifting off, and then they would go, oh, yeah. Because I've only ever seen this the second time I've seen this film, and I remember that soundtrack just as something about it. Like, so yeah, I don't think you're alone there, and it's definitely overall more fun than the last Shark. But then again, it's a very, I mean, Shark. That's like the only thing. Right? I mean, there's nothing else. There's no connective tissue here.
No,
it's not really. If anything, it's a Shark's Cave rip-off. And that's a fairly obscure rip-off to be doing. I don't know how big a hit Shark's Cave was.
Right. But I would say, like what you were saying about, you know, film actors, I mean, I don't know that necessarily you would get as well. You might actually, if you were to watch everything that Franco Nero was in, you'd see some strange things. Like you'd see Enter the Ninja, you'd see Camelot, you'd see you know, other than the kind of, you'd see some giallos, you'd see Die Hard 2.
The reason I would choose someone with Klaus Kinski or Jorge Luke, for example, is more like, even though he did do it earlier in his career, almost everything Franco Nero in is he's gonna, well, actually he did do some cameo, but it's almost gonna be either cameo or lead.
Right.
I think what's interesting about Klaus Kinski or Horville or someone like of that caliber is they're going to be a supporting character. Right?
Yes.
So you'd have more of a variety, because if you just watch Franco Nero, you'd just have Franco Nero vehicles, which is fine, but it would be a different thing. I think Klaus Kinski kind of meanders in the background like some kind of filthy
gargoyle
presence. Yeah.
Yes, fair enough. But I will say, and I'll always go on record as saying that I will watch anything with Franco Nero, because he's never giving, as you said, from the moment this movie starts, he's giving 120%, which he always does, you know. And I also love the fact that he gets the crap kicked out of him in everything I've ever seen him in. And like, and he seems to do his own stunts a lot of the time too, which I appreciate.
No, he's good. I like him. He's been quite high profile recently. Some film he made, which I think is actually 2 or 3 years old, recently got a release in the UK. What the fuck's it called? It's someone's name is in the title.
It's not Cars 2, because I believe he's in Cars 2.
No, it's something like the something case. So it's based on a best-selling novel. It's supposed to be quite an interesting film, like a courtroom drama or something.
Okay.
So, yeah, so he's still out there. He's still still knocking about.
Well, we should probably wrap it up, I think.
Yes.
Sounds like that was a lot of Italian sharks.
Fuck yeah. Squali.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
right. Yeah.
So maybe the image we should leave everybody with is possibly hand puppets or possibly not. Fish.
Right.
Taking the bikinis off of ladies under the water.
To a thumping disco soundtrack.
Yep.
What
more do you need?
That sounds like a weekend that I need to have after all this. All right then. Until next time. That's been your film Crack.
All right.
See
Take care, everyone. Don't go in the water.
Bye.